Hello, I am James Mahoney, writer and filmmaker. Some of you may know of me from the D&D community as Dorg and Kishu, Paladin and Dragon Rider. This is a new series I'm calling I Filmmaker. This series is going to have, it's going to be 3 parts. It's going to have to do with my personal projects, whether they're old or current or future. It's going to be reviews or opinions on films or shows that I've seen, feedback, insight, that kind of thing on that. The third part, I'll probably be talking about my biggest strengths, I think, are story, story scope, character, and character development. So the third part will probably be working on or talking about one or all those things, and it may be connecting to a certain film or show. This is brand new, so just bear with me, just trying to figure out the format. Let me go ahead and get to my first part. This episode is called First Dreams First. My first dream was actually to be a baseball player, a pitcher. Nolan Ryan was my favorite pitcher. I'm 51. I don't know if I look younger. I might look a little younger than that. Yeah, he was a pitcher that I was familiar with in the 70s. But my parents, we got this house, and I'm actually staying there now. And but then they got divorced shortly after. So it was just me, my brother, and my mom really growing up, and my sisters were kind of not really here. They were baseball was mom says I brought up baseball maybe once. I intuitively I knew that it was going to be rough for her to be able to take me to batting practices. We live kind of in a remote canyon little area, and she worked all the time, and so I never really pursued baseball. Which led me to my next film, my next dream, which led me to my next dream, the one that stuck with me my whole life, and that is filmmaking. In 1977, my brother, my mom, and I all went to see the original Star Wars, and that was like the beginning of the end. I mean, I was a filmmaker from that point. Quoting Robert Rodriguez, who says, as soon as you start, think you're a filmmaker, you are one. But basically, Star Wars was it changed my life. I know it's a very popular film, it's affected a lot of people and everything, but for me personally, I was 8 years old when I saw it. I'm not a better age to see it. And I was a filmmaker from that point forward. And then Empire Strikes Back came out in 1980, and it was the best sequel I've ever seen. I know people talk about The Godfather. I've seen The Godfather, one, I don't remember how many of those films, and I just don't have a strong opinion on them because I don't remember them very well. But anyway, I'm not comparing, this is just my personal preference. But Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back really was instilled in me that I was a filmmaker. My brother and I had action figures when we were kids. My mom worked at Toys R Us for a while. We used to play action figures and make gigantic stories, and I would do voices. We both do voices. But then in my 20s, I really wanted to pursue film, and I didn't. I was without going too personal, there were reasons why I wasn't pursuing it in my 20s, and I really wanted to. But then came when I turned 30, I was in a corporate American job. I had been there for 8 years and making good money, but I was fried. I didn't want to be in an office anymore either. And I decided to walk away from the good paying corporate job, live off my savings, get some other jobs along the way. I moved to Oregon because I'm in California now, and was then. And where my brother was, who I wanted to reconnect with. So I moved to Oregon and bought a video camera and started doing experimental filmmaking. I basically put myself through film school. And then in 2000, so that was 2000. And then 2001, I moved back to Southern California. That was Oregon. Went back to Southern California, and I literally wrote 3 episodes of a sci-fi series that I wanted to try to sell to a Sci-Fi Channel, which was a fairly new thing back then, I think. I wrote the first draft, but I never went further with that, except that I worked on film. I made some custom-made minis and little sets, and did some more additional experimental filmmaking with little action figures, and it was kind of making. But I was really ready to work with people at that point. And my brother was in Oregon again because he kind of moved around, but he really wanted me to move to Oregon, and I told him I needed to work on short films, and he said I'll work with you on short films. I moved up there, and his marriage was a disaster, and he couldn't work with me on short films. And out of frustration, one day I called him and said, "Can I just borrow you for an hour?" And I wrote a 5-minute script, went there, did a short film called If Not Now, about 2 brothers, where one of the brothers has kids and this and that, and kind of giving up his dreams, and the other one's kind of like, hey, you're giving up your dreams. So Then I spent 8 to 12 hours in editing, and everybody thought, no way you're going to make anything out of this footage, because it was shot in an hour and a half, and it's really, you know, it's rough, but it gets the point across. And I submitted to a film festival in New York and got it in. But I'm going to talk more about that another time. Just trying to give you a little bit of where I'm at. So the moving forward, so then after the film festival, I went to see it in 2002. In 2003, late 2002, I ran into some health issues. And I kept trying to do film anyway. I was working on a 1 hour film, but then I ran into issues with it. It wasn't just health. I went through some trauma associated with the health, and I went through anxiety, and I had to just step away from film, and it broke my heart. 2004, I could not be able to pursue filmmaking, and I started to work on, I'd written an 80-page first draft screenplay in 2000, and I started to rewrite that. I poured hundreds of hours into that. I tried to then send query letters out to different writing agents, trying to get them to read it so that they would represent me and then show it to companies, and I couldn't get an agent. And so I put that aside. And then in 2000, from like 2006 to 2011, I put all my dreams aside, and I just played World of Warcraft, to be honest with you. I've been through trauma, I've been through medical stuff. My health is fine. It was fine back then, but I was traumatized from it. And I, like I said, I spent from like 2006, 2011, I was just playing World of Warcraft. And then 2011, kind of stepped away from that. And then I started a writing blog, and I started to write poetry, and I started to write novellas, and I started to write fantasy novels. And I published a couple novellas, I published some poetry. I have a fantasy novel that needs to be rewritten. So writing, because I realized that I'm not just a filmmaker, I'm a writer. When I originally left corporate America and moved to my brother's, I came to the realization I always wanted to be a director. But I came to the realization I kind of want to direct things the ideas that I have. So I realized I was a writer director. So didn't really realize that really until I was like 30. So yeah, so then from like 2011, 2013, did a lot of 2011, 2013, did a lot of writing, some self-publishing, took a break then. And then for a couple, and then at the end of 2015, I filmed a trailer for the screenplay I finished called White Jade. And I'm going to go into all this more later. I'm just kind of giving you the over thing. And then what happened is that I did this trailer, and boom, I was so inspired that I decided to try to make it into broke up a script into 16 parts and tried to do a YouTube, it was getting big right then. And I wanted to try to do a web series for budget purposes and just able to get it out there. So I went to pre-production from like March to like October of 2016. I'll be going more into that too. And then for different reasons, I had to step away from that in 2017 and I was just about to start filming, so that was rough. But I'll get into that more. I'm just kind of giving you an overview. And since then, I've just been took a chill, and I just returned to playing Dungeons and Dragons, which I hadn't done since I was my teens and in my 20s. Started playing it. There was a new edition. I tried it out. I got into it, and I did vlogs and all kinds of stuff. So that's all there. So that's my overview of me as a filmmaker. Kind of want to shift over into the second part of this now. We'll get back to things like detail about that kind of stuff in other episodes ahead. Moving into reviews, I just happened to yesterday was the premiere was season 5 of She'Ra, which is on Netflix, dropped, and my girlfriend and I literally watched 13 episodes yesterday, and we loved it. I've liked the show, period. It's very powerful. It's very girl-oriented in regards to not because it's about a princess or because it's a cartoon, but there's a lot of very strong girl characters, and it touches on all kinds of subjects that we're dealing with openly these days in the LGBT and everything else. And it's a very powerful production, and beyond the message and in the symbolism that it represents, though, it's just great writing, great characters, great music, but some people don't like cartoons, or some don't like certain kind of cartoons. And I love Voltron, but that's it. Maybe I'll talk about that another time. But yeah, I will say the 2 thumbs up on season 5 of She'Ra. I recommend the whole series. If you can't get it, the first season is, you gotta just take the first season, kind of the entry level of the whole thing, but by season 2, it's just rolling, and it never stops. And it just really ended, because the final season of the series, it ended. It couldn't have ended better, and we're gonna be watching, and my girlfriend goes to sleep with this stuff at night, so I see it over and over again. So that is my review and my opinion this week. Moving into what I consider my strengths as a filmmaker, maybe as a storyteller in general. And I get this from Star Wars. I quote it from Star Wars. Well, this is something that I got from Star Wars. Story scope, characters, and character development. So in Star Wars, you've got, in my opinion, a great story. You've got great story scope because it's stretched. It's stretched. I mean, literally, it starts in episode 6, moves into starts in episode 4, goes to 6, and then you go all the way back, and then you go forward, and it's you can't have more story scope than that. And then characters. For me, you can, even if there's not a great story, or if there's not a great production, if you got great characters, I can still get something from a production. So characters are really key, and the character development. Well, I really feel like even once again, the Star Wars characters, they all grew. Specifically, if you mentioned, like, if we talk about Luke. I mean, when I was 8 years old, I loved Han Solo. I love Darth Vader. To this day, Darth Vader is my favorite villain and my favorite probably character of all time in anything. That's just what resonates with me. I love a really good villain. So with Luke, I mean, my experience with him is he was kind of a whiny guy. This is now when I was younger. And then in the second film, he's kind of starting to, Empire Strikes Back was so good. And when he went and trained with Yoda, and then at the end, when he went and found out that, spoiler alert, Darth was his father and everything else, all of that. Luke was, character development. He had come a long way by the second film. But by the third film, I really think of the third film as Luke's film. I think he becomes a Jedi. The whole second half of the film where he's, with the Emperor, with his father, and it's his film. I think that his character development has, so I think you get what I'm talking about. So you get an idea of what I'm talking about in this section of the show. I'll probably I talked a little bit about Luke in this one, but I'll probably, this is where I'm going to talk about either story scope, kind of just figuring this out as I go. But this is long enough for a first episode, and keep looking at me on the screen instead of looking at the camera. So my eyes are going to probably be blah, blah. And I hope that you will continue to check Filmmaker out with me. I'm really looking forward. I really want to be making films right now, but until I am, and probably when I begin again, I'm going to be doing this. So I appreciate you coming by, and I will see you next time. I'm going to try to get these out weekly. Hoping for it. So follow me, and maybe it'll notify you. I don't know. Okay, bye.